Admiral Kevvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Serpent, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. His pale blue skin gleamed under the soft lights of the command center. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everything was perfect, just like it always was. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 73 star systems. Each victory came the same way, swift, clean, and total. The aliens they fought always made the same mistakes. They used old tactics. They fought with emotion instead of logic. They never learned from their defeats because there were no survivors to learn from. Admiral called his communications officer, turning from her station. "We are receiving the final intelligence reports on the human homeworld." Kevvar moved closer to the tactical display. The information appeared as blue lights and symbols floating in the air before him. He studied the data with the same careful attention he gave to everything. This was how the Zephyrians won their wars, through complete information and perfect planning. "Tell me what we know about these humans," he said. His intelligence officer, a tall Zephyrian with dark markings on his face, stepped forward. "The species calls itself humanity. They live on the third planet from their star, which they call Earth. Our scouts report that they have developed space travel, but their technology is at least 200 years behind ours." Kevvar nodded. This was typical. Most species the Empire encountered were far behind in technology. It made conquest much easier. "What about their weapons?" he asked. "Primitive kinetic weapons, mostly. Metal projectiles fired by chemical explosives. Some basic energy weapons, but nothing that can penetrate our shields. Their largest warships are less than half the size of our smallest cruiser." The Admiral walked slowly around the tactical display. Each piece of information fit perfectly into his understanding of warfare. The humans would be like all the others, frightened, disorganized, and quickly defeated. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Their entire defense fleet consists of 3 large vessels, and perhaps 20 smaller ones. Our fleet of 12 warships should be more than sufficient." Kevvar smiled. 12 ships against 3. The humans would surrender before the first shot was fired. They always did when they saw how outmatched they were. "What about their government?" he asked. "This is where they show their weakness most clearly," the intelligence officer replied. "They have no central authority. Different regions of their planet have different leaders. They spend much of their time fighting among themselves. Even their military forces are divided into separate groups that barely work together." Perfect, thought Kevvar. A divided enemy was a defeated enemy. The Zephyrians had learned this lesson long ago. Unity of command, unity of purpose, unity of action. These were the keys to victory in war. "Admiral," his navigation officer called out, "we are approaching the edge of their star system." Kevvar returned to his command chair. Through the viewing screen, he could see the human star growing larger. It was yellow, unlike the blue star that warmed his homeworld. Around it, he knew, circled the planets where humanity made their home. "Send word to all ships," he commanded. "We will follow standard procedure. Formation Delta 7. All ships maintain precise spacing. When we enter their space, we will demonstrate our power, then offer them the chance to surrender." The crew carried out his orders with smooth efficiency. Kevvar watched the tactical display as his 12 ships moved into perfect formation. Each vessel knew exactly where to be and when to be there. No confusion, no uncertainty, no chaos. This was the Zephyrian way of war. Every battle was planned down to the smallest detail. Every ship had its role. Every weapon had its target. Every possible enemy response had been calculated and prepared for. On the edge of the human system, a small ship appeared on their sensors. Kevvar studied the reading with interest. It was clearly human. The energy signature matched their intelligence reports, but it was much smaller than their warships. Probably a research vessel or cargo transport. Research vessel or cargo transport. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "the human ship is transmitting signals toward their homeworld. High-power communications. Let them," Kevvar said calmly, "let them warn their planet that we are coming. Fear will make them more likely to surrender without fighting." He turned to address his crew. "Prepare the demonstration. Target the largest asteroid in this system. Full power plasma cannon. Let the humans see what our weapons can do. The Void Serpent's main weapon began to charge. Kefvar could hear the low humming sound it made as energy built up in the firing chamber. In a few moments, they would turn a mountain of rock into dust and gas. The humans would understand that resistance was pointless. Admiral, his communications officer, called. "We are detecting many transmissions from a human homeworld. Their communications network is very active." Kefvar nodded. "They are panicking. As expected. Their leaders are probably trying to decide whether to fight or surrender. The chaos in their communications shows how disorganized they are." He looked at the tactical display again. The 3 human warships were moving, but not in any formation he recognized. They seemed to be moving randomly, without any clear plan or purpose. One was heading toward their fleet, while the other 2 were taking different paths entirely. "Interesting," he said quietly. "They cannot even coordinate their defense. This will be easier than we thought." His weapons officer turned from her station. "Plasma cannon ready to fire, Admiral." "Fire," Kefvar commanded. The beam of superheated energy lanced out from a void serpent, crossing the empty space between them and the asteroid in seconds. When it struck, the massive rock simply vanished in a ball of white-hot plasma. Where there had been solid stone, now there was only glowing gas expanding into space. "Send the surrender demand to all human settlements," Kefvar ordered. Standard message in their languages. Tell them they have 1 hour to respond with complete submission. As his crew carried out his orders, Admiral Kefvar felt the satisfaction that came with another successful campaign. Soon, humanity would join the long list of species that had learned to bow before the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Their homeworld would become another productive colony. Their people would serve the Empire as all conquered peoples did. It would be swift, clean, and total, just like always. Captain Jake Morrison watched the screens with growing alarm. The Aurora was just a research ship, not built for combat, but her sensors were among the best humanity had ever created. What they were showing him made his stomach tight with fear. "How many ships?" he asked the sensor operator. 12 confirmed, Captain. All of them bigger than anything in our fleet. They're moving in perfect formation, maintaining exact distances from each other. Jake had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years before taking command of the Aurora. He had never seen ships move with such precision. Human fleets were always a bit messy, with ships adjusting their positions constantly, crews talking back and forth, small changes happening all the time. These alien ships moved like they were connected by invisible wires. "Send a warning to Earth Defense Command," he ordered. "Maximum priority. Tell them we have hostile contact. 12 large vessels, unknown technology, entering our system." The communications officer worked quickly at her station. "Message sent, Captain. We're also picking up a massive energy discharge from the lead alien ship." On the main screen, Jake watched an asteroid the size of a small mountain simply disappear. The energy beam that destroyed it was unlike anything he had ever seen. It didn't just break the rock apart. It turned the entire thing into glowing gas in less than a second. "Get us out of here," he said quietly. "Best speed toward Earth. And keep transmitting everything our sensors pick up." Back on Earth, the message from the Aurora sent shock waves to the Defense Command Center. General Lisa Hart stood in the main operations room, watching as displays showed the alien fleet approaching. Around her, officers and technicians worked frantically to prepare humanity's response. "How long until they reach Earth?" she asked. "At their current speed, 18 hours, replied her intelligence officer. "But they could accelerate if they wanted to." Admiral Steve Collins joined her at the main display. His weathered face showed the strain of 30 years in Earth's military. 12 ships, he said grimly. "We have 3. The Independence, the Liberty, and the Constitution," General Hart confirmed, "plus about 20 smaller vessels. Not good odds." "The Independence is our best ship," Collins said. "Captain Ryan Brooks is commanding. If anyone can handle this, he can." General Hart nodded. She knew Brooks by reputation. He was young for a battleship captain, only 38, but he had come up through the ranks during the Europa conflict. He understood space combat better than almost anyone in the fleet. What do we know about their weapons? She asked. Her intelligence officer pulled up the sensor data from the Aurora. That energy beam they used to destroy the asteroid produced more power than our entire planetary defense grid. Their ships appear to be heavily shielded. We're not even sure our weapons can hurt them. Admiral Collins studied the alien formation on the display. Look at how they move, he said. Perfect spacing, exact timing. It's like watching a military parade. Is that good or bad for us? General Hart asked. I'm not sure yet. It shows they have incredible discipline and coordination, but it might also mean they're not used to enemies who fight differently than they do. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Independence, Captain Ryan Brooks was having similar thoughts. The Independence was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, but compared to what was coming toward them, she seemed small and weak. Status report. He called out as he entered the bridge. Communications Officer Kelly Shaw turned from her station. We've received the full sensor data from the Aurora. Captain, the alien ships are maintaining radio silence, but we did intercept one transmission. What did it say? It was a surrender demand. Sir, transmitted in 17 different human languages. They want us to submit completely within 1 hour. Captain Brooks sat down in his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were good people, experienced officers who had served with him through several conflicts. But nothing had prepared them for this. How long until they reach firing range? He asked. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Park, checked his displays. Assuming they maintain current speed and course, for hours until they can engage our outer defense platforms. Chief Engineer Mike Torres's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. Captain, I've been looking at the sensor data on their weapons. That energy beam they used, it's some kind of plasma cannon. Very advanced, but I think I understand how it works. Can our shield stop it? Brooks asked. Not a chance, sir. But here's the interesting part. Their shields might not stop our weapons either. That energy beam is designed to cut through similar energy-based defenses. Our kinetic weapons use a completely different principle. Brooks felt a spark of hope. Humanity's weapons fired solid projectiles at tremendous speed. The aliens might not be prepared for that kind of attack. What about their formation? He asked Lieutenant Park. Very disciplined, sir. Textbook spacing and positioning. It's designed to give them overlapping fields of fire while protecting their flanks. Textbook for who? Brooks asked. Park paused, understanding the implications. For them, sir. It assumes the enemy will follow similar tactics. Captain Brooks stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. In the distance, he could see Earth, the blue and white marble that held everything humanity had ever known. Behind him, his crew waited for orders. Signal to Liberty and Constitution, he said. Tell them we're implementing Doctrine Delta. Kelly Shaw looked surprised. Sir, Doctrine Delta hasn't been tested in real combat. Then I guess we're about to find out if it works, Brooks replied. Also, send a message to all crew members. Tell them what we're up against. No lies, no false hope. They deserve to know the truth. As his orders were carried out, Captain Brooks thought about what was coming. The aliens had superior technology and numbers. They moved with perfect coordination and had weapons that could destroy anything humanity could build. But they had never fought humans before. They didn't know that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their ability to adapt, to change, to find new ways to fight when the old ways didn't work. In 18 hours, they would find out if that was enough. The Zephyrian fleet moved through space like a deadly dance. Each ship held its exact position relative to the others. The formation was beautiful in its precision, a mathematical masterpiece that had been perfected over centuries of conquest. Admiral Kevvar stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. In 2 hours, they would be within firing range of the human homeworld. The surrender deadline had passed with no response from humanity, which meant they would have to demonstrate their power more directly. Report on human fleet movements, he commanded. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings. 3 large vessels have left orbit around their homeworld, Admiral. They appear to be moving to intercept us. 3 ships against 12, Kethvar mused. Either they're incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Our analysis suggests the latter, Admiral. Their movements show no clear tactical pattern. The lead ship is approaching us directly, while the other 2 are taking completely different courses. There is no coordination between them. This was exactly what Kethvar had expected. Humans, like most primitive species, did not understand the art of coordinated warfare. They probably thought bravery and individual heroism could make up for poor tactics and inferior technology. "Show me their weapon systems," he ordered. The tactical display changed to show detailed scans of the approaching human ships. Kethvar studied the information with the careful attention of a predator examining its prey. Kinetic weapons, he noted. Chemical explosives. Some basic energy projectors. Nothing our shields cannot handle easily. His weapons officer looked up from her station. "Admiral, shall we target their lead ship for demonstration purposes?" "Not yet," Kethvar replied. "Let them come closer. I want them to see our formation in action. Watch how we move, how we coordinate our fire. Let them understand what true military precision looks like before we destroy them." The Zephyrian fleet began its final approach maneuver. It was a thing of beauty. 12 ships moving as one, each vessel taking its designated position in the attack formation. The lead ships spread out to create overlapping fields of fire. The support vessels moved to protect the flanks. The command ships positioned themselves to coordinate the entire battle. Every movement was calculated. Every position was optimal. Every possible human response had been anticipated and planned for. This was how civilized beings conducted warfare, through superior intelligence, perfect coordination, and overwhelming force applied with mathematical precision. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from the human ships." "What are they saying?" Kethvar asked. "The messages are chaotic, Admiral. Multiple voices, overlapping communications, constant chatter between their ships and with their homeworld. It is very difficult to understand their intentions." Kethvar nodded. This was another sign of human primitiveness. Proper military communications were clear, precise, and limited to essential information. The constant chatter he was hearing suggested a lack of discipline and training. "Are they coordinating their attack?" he asked. "It is hard to tell, Admiral. Their communications do not follow any pattern we can identify. Sometimes they seem to be giving orders, sometimes asking questions, sometimes just talking about technical details." "Panic," Kethvar concluded. "They know they are about to die, and their discipline is breaking down." On the main viewing screen, the human lead ship was now visible as more than just a dot of light. It was smaller than the Void Serpent, but not as small as the intelligence reports had suggested. Its hull was angular and brutal-looking, covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. "Interesting design," Kethvar observed. "Very aggressive appearance. They built this ship to look frightening." His science officer studied the human vessel through the ship's powerful telescopes. "Admiral, their hull appears to be much thicker than we expected. Multiple layers of armor and shielding. No matter. Our plasma cannons will cut through any armor they can build." The tactical display updated to show the current positions of all ships. The Zephyrian fleet was in perfect attack formation. The human ships were doing something that made no sense at all. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, confusion clear in his voice, "I cannot determine what the humans are trying to accomplish. Their lead ship is heading directly toward our center, but the other 2 are moving in seemingly random patterns." Kethvar studied the display more carefully. The human movements did appear random. There was no recognizable tactical formation, no clear strategy, no apparent coordination between the ships. "Perhaps they do not understand space combat at all," he said. "Their wars may have been fought only on planetary surfaces. That would explain their confusion, Admiral. They are applying ground-based tactics to space warfare." The lead human ship was now close enough that individual details of its structure were visible. Kethvar could see weapon turrets rotating to track his ships. Launch bays were opening along its sides. Smaller craft, fighters or bombers, were deploying from its hull. Now they show their true desperation, he said, sending tiny fighters against capital ships. It is almost sad. But something about the human ship's behavior was beginning to concern him. It was not slowing down or maneuvering to avoid his fleet. Instead, it was accelerating directly toward the center of his formation. Sir, his navigation officer called out urgently. The human ship is on a collision course with our formation. If it maintains current speed and heading, it will pass directly between our ships. Ketvar felt a moment of surprise. This was not a tactic he had encountered before. Most enemies tried to stay at long range, where they could use their weapons without risking close combat. But the humans seemed to be deliberately closing the distance. Are they planning to ram us? He wondered aloud. Unknown, Admiral, but at their current speed, they will be in weapons range in 12 minutes. Ketvar made his decision. All ships, prepare to fire on my command. Target the lead human vessel. We will destroy it before it can reach us, then deal with the other two. The Zephyrian fleet responded with perfect coordination, weapons powered up across all 12 ships, targeting systems locked onto the approaching human vessel. Fire control computers calculated optimal firing solutions. Everything was ready. Everything was perfect. Everything was going exactly according to plan, except for one thing that Admiral Ketvar could not quite understand. Why did the humans seem so eager to die? Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the USS Independence, watching the alien fleet grow larger on his main screen. 12 ships in perfect formation, moving like parts of a single machine. It was impressive, he had to admit. It was also exactly what he had hoped for. Distance enemy fleet? He asked. Navigator Tom Price checked his instruments. 11 minutes at current speed, Captain. Signal from Admiral Collins, sir. Communications Officer Kelly Shaw reported. He's asking if we really want to implement Doctrine Delta against an unknown enemy. Brooks almost smiled. Admiral Collins was a good man, but he thought like most military officers, careful, methodical, following proven tactics. Doctrine Delta was none of those things. Tell the Admiral that unknown enemies are exactly why we developed Doctrine Delta, Brooks replied. Conventional tactics work against conventional enemies. These aliens are anything but conventional. He turned to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Park, what do you see when you look at their formation? Dan Park studied the tactical display. Perfect spacing, sir. Overlapping fields of fire. Each ship positioned to support the others. It's textbook fleet tactics. Whose textbook? Brooks asked. Park paused, understanding the question. Theirs, sir. It assumes the enemy will behave in predictable ways. Exactly. They perfected the art of fighting enemies who fight like they do. But we don't fight like anyone else, do we? Around the bridge, Brooks could see his crew beginning to understand. These were veterans of the Europa conflict. People who had learned that survival sometimes meant throwing away the rule book and improvising. Chief Torres. Brooks called to his engineering officer over the intercom. Are you ready for some creative power management? Mike Torres's voice came back from the engine room, tinged with excitement. Sir, I got 17 different power routing configurations ready to go. The aliens won't know what hit them. Lieutenant Commander Ross. Brooks said to his weapons officer, deploy all fighter squadrons, but not in standard formation. Amy Ross nodded. Understood, sir. Random deployment patterns, individual attack vectors. Kelly, he said to his communications officer, open channels to all department heads. I want constant chatter. Everything that's happening, every system status, every tactical change. Make it sound like chaos. Kelly Shaw looked surprised. Sir, that goes against all communications protocol. Exactly. The aliens are listening to us. Let them think we're panicking and disorganized. Let them think we don't know what we're doing. The Independence shuddered slightly as her fighter squadrons launched. Unlike the neat, orderly formations the aliens were used to seeing, the human fighters scattered in all directions. Some headed directly for the alien fleet. Others took wide, seemingly random courses. A few actually appeared to be heading away from the battle entirely. Sir, Tom Price called out, the alien fleet is adjusting formation. They're preparing to concentrate fire on us. Perfect, Brooks replied. They're doing exactly what their training tells them to do. All power to forward shields. Increase speed to maximum. The Independents leaped forward, accelerating directly toward the center of the alien formation. On the tactical display, Brooks could see the enemy ships moving to intercept, their movements as precise and coordinated as ever. Captain, Dan Park said nervously, we're heading directly into their crossfire. They'll be able to concentrate all their weapons on us. That's the plan, Lieutenant. Sometimes the best way to avoid getting shot is to be where your enemy doesn't expect you to be. The communications chatter on the bridge was constant now. Every department was reporting status updates, asking questions, requesting permission for various actions. To an outside observer, it would sound like complete chaos. Officers talking over each other, multiple conversations happening at once, constant changes and adjustments being made in real time. But Brooks knew better. This wasn't chaos. It was control flexibility. Every person on his ship was thinking, adapting, contributing to the overall plan. Unlike the aliens, who had one plan that everyone followed, the humans had dozens of plans that could change at a moment's notice. Sir, Kelly Shaw reported, I'm monitoring alien communications. They seem confused by our movements. They're having trouble predicting our intentions. Good. Confusion is our friend. The more time they spend trying to figure out what we're doing, the less time they have to shoot at us effectively. The Independence was now close enough to the alien fleet that individual ships were clearly visible on the screen. Brooks could see their weapons turning to track his ship, calculating firing solutions, preparing to destroy him. All departments, stand by for evasive maneuvers, he announced. This is where it gets interesting. Chief Torres's voice came over the intercom. Captain, I've got power rerouted to the maneuvering thrusters. We can change direction faster than anything the size should be able to. Outstanding. Tom, prepare for Pattern 7. Navigator Tom Price's hands moved over his controls. Pattern 7 was one of the most dangerous maneuvers in the human tactical manual. It involved rapid direction changes at maximum acceleration, putting tremendous stress on both the ship and crew. Sir, Amy Ross called out, alien ships are powering weapons. I'm reading massive energy buildups across their entire fleet. Here we go, Brooks said quietly. Everyone hold on. The alien fleet opened fire. 12 beams of superheated plasma lanced through space, converging on the spot where the Independence should have been. But the human ship was no longer there. At the last possible moment, Tom Price had triggered Pattern 7. The Independence twisted away from the alien weapons, her hull groaning under the stress of the sudden maneuver. The plasma beams passed harmlessly through empty space. Now! Brooks shouted. All weapons, fire at will. The Independence's railguns opened up, sending streams of hypervelocity projectiles toward the alien ships. At the same time, her missile bays launched dozens of guided warheads, each one programmed with a different attack pattern. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect similar energy weapons, were useless against solid projectiles. Several railgun rounds punched through the shields of the nearest alien ship, tearing holes in its hull. Direct hits, Amy Ross reported. Their shields can't stop our kinetic weapons. But the aliens were already adapting. Their formation began to change, ships moving to new positions, adjusting their tactics to account for the unexpected human weapons. They learn fast, Brooks observed. But let's see how they handle this. He turned to his communications officer. Kelly, signal the Liberty and Constitution. Tell them to execute their parts of the plan. Across the solar system, the other 2 human battleships had been following their own unpredictable courses. Now they began to converge on the alien fleet from completely unexpected directions. The aliens, focused on the Independence, suddenly found themselves facing attacks from 3 sides at once. Sir, Dan Park called out excitedly, their formation is breaking up. They're having trouble maintaining coordination. Brooks watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The aliens had spent so long perfecting the art of coordinated warfare that they didn't know how to fight when their coordination was disrupted. This is just beginning, he said. Now, let's show them what human fighters can do. Commander Jack Stone pulled his fighter into a sharp turn, feeling the G-forces press him deep into his seat. Around him, the battle was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The alien ships were huge, their weapons devastating, but they were fighting like they expected him to follow rules. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Stone," he called over the radio. "Forget everything they taught you at the academy. These aliens think we're going to fly in nice, neat formations. Let's prove them wrong." His wingman, Major Beth Clark, laughed grimly over the comm. "Copy that. Commander. Going to show them some real human flying." The human fighters scattered across the battlefield like angry wasps. Each pilot chose their own target, their own attack vector, their own tactics. Some dove straight at the alien ships from above. Others came in low and fast, skimming just above the alien hulls. A few even seemed to be flying completely random patterns, confusing the alien targeting computers. Commander Stone picked out his target, a large alien cruiser that was trying to bring its main weapons to bear on the Independence. Its plasma cannons were charging, building up the energy needed to cut through the human battleship's armor. "Not on my watch," he muttered, pushing his fighter's engines to maximum. The alien ship's defensive systems tracked him as he approached. Point defense weapons opened fire, filling the space around him with energy bolts. But Stone had learned his flying in the asteroid belts around Jupiter, dodging rocks and debris at high speed. The alien weapons were powerful, but they were designed for targets that moved predictably. He rolled his fighter inverted, dove under the alien ship's fire, then pulled up hard, coming at his target from an angle the defensive systems couldn't cover. His missiles launched just as he flashed over the alien hull, close enough to see details of their hull construction. The warhead struck home, tearing holes in the alien ship's armor. Atmosphere vented into space in white plumes. The charging plasma cannon flickered and went dark. "That's one down," he called out. "Phoenix Squadron, pick your targets and hit them hard." Meanwhile, aboard the Independence, Captain Brooks watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The alien formation was in chaos now. Ships that had moved in perfect coordination just minutes before were struggling to maintain any kind of order. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported, "the alien flagship is trying to re-establish formation control. They're sending out coordination signals to their other ships." "Can we jam those signals?" Brooks asked. Chief Torres's voice came over the intercom. "Already working on it, Captain. I reconfigured our communications array to broadcast interference on their command frequencies." Brooks smiled grimly. This was exactly what Doctrine Delta was designed for: constant adaptation, using every advantage they could find or create. The aliens had superior technology, but they seemed to have only one way of using it. "Amy, target their flagship with everything we've got," he ordered. "If we can take out their command ship, the rest might not know what to do." Lieutenant Commander Amy Ross worked her weapons controls with practiced efficiency. Railguns locked on target, missiles programmed and ready. Fire. The Independence unleashed everything she had. Hypervelocity projectiles screamed across space, followed by a swarm of guided missiles. At the same time, her remaining fighter squadrons pressed home their attacks on the alien escorts. The alien flagship shields flared as the railgun round struck. The energy barriers held for a moment, then began to fail under the sustained barrage. Several missiles found their way through the weakened shields, exploding against the alien hull. But the alien ship was enormous, and it would take more than one attack to bring it down. Its main weapons were turning toward the Independence, massive plasma cannons that could vaporize a human ship with a single shot. Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display in growing disbelief. What had started as a simple conquest was turning into a nightmare. His perfect formation was scattered. His ships were fighting individual battles instead of coordinated warfare. And somehow, impossibly, the humans were winning. "Status report," he demanded. His tactical officer's voice was strained. "We have lost 3 ships completely, Admiral. 5 others are heavily damaged. The humans they are not fighting the way our models predicted." Kethvar could see that for himself. The human fighters were everywhere, striking from impossible angles, ignoring their own losses, pressing attacks that should have been suicide missions. Their battleships move like living things, unpredictable and deadly. "How are they penetrating our shields?" he asked. "Their weapons are completely different from ours, Admiral. Instead of energy beams, they fire solid projectiles at tremendous velocity. Our shields were designed to deflect energy attacks, not physical impacts." This was the first time in Admiral Kethvar's career that an enemy had used weapons his fleet couldn't handle. The Zephyrian military had encountered dozens of different species, but all of them had followed similar technological development: energy weapons, defensive shields, coordinated tactics. The humans were different. "Admiral," his communications officer called out urgently, "the human battleship is heading directly for us. Collision course." On the main viewing screen, the USS Independence filled Kethvar's vision. The human ship was damaged. Her hull was scarred by plasma fire. Several of her weapons were destroyed, and atmosphere was venting from multiple breaches. But she was still coming, still fighting. "They intend to ram us," Kethvar said with amazement. "They would destroy their own ship to damage ours." "Should we change course, Admiral?" Kethvar hesitated. Everything in his training told him to maneuver away from the collision, to preserve his ship and crew. But if he moved, it would mean the humans had forced him to retreat. The psychological impact on his remaining ships would be devastating. "All weapons, target the human ship," he ordered. "Destroy it before it reaches us." The Void Serpent's plasma cannons opened fire, joined by the weapons of nearby Zephyrian ships. Energy beams lanced out toward the Independence. But the human ship twisted away at the last moment, her pilot executing maneuvers that should have been impossible for something so large. "How can they move like that?" Kethvar's navigation officer asked in wonder. "Their inertial compensation systems must be far more advanced than we thought," the tactical officer replied. "Either that, or their crew can survive acceleration that would kill us." Kethvar had a horrible suspicion. It was the latter. The humans seemed willing to accept levels of risk and damage that no civilized species would tolerate. They fought as if their lives meant nothing compared to victory. "Sir," his engineering officer reported, "we are detecting massive power fluctuations from the human ship. Their reactor is operating far beyond safe parameters." "Are they losing power?" "No, Admiral. They are deliberately overloading their systems to increase performance. The radiation levels inside their ship must be lethal." This was madness. No rational commander would ask his crew to die slowly from radiation poisoning just to gain a temporary advantage in battle. But the humans seemed to think it was acceptable. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "I am monitoring human communications. They're still maintaining constant chatter between all their ships and fighters. Can you determine their strategy from their communications?" "That is the problem, Admiral. They seem to have dozens of strategies, all happening at the same time. Every pilot is making independent decisions. Every ship captain is adapting to local conditions. There is no central plan that we can predict or counter." Kethvar felt something he had never experienced before in battle: genuine fear. Not fear of death, but fear of the unknown. The humans were fighting in ways that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They were chaos incarnate, and chaos could not be calculated or controlled. "Sir," his tactical officer called out urgently, "the human ship has launched another missile barrage. But these are different. They are changing course after launch, attacking from multiple directions." On the display, Kethvar watched dozens of human missiles spiral through space in seemingly random patterns. Just as his defensive systems locked onto them, they would change course, forcing new targeting solutions. Some actually looped around behind his ships, attacking from the rear. "Impossible," he breathed. "Missiles cannot maneuver like that. These appear to have individual guidance systems, Admiral. Each one is making its own decisions about how to attack." Even the human weapons were chaotic. Instead of following predictable ballistic paths, each missile was essentially a tiny pilot, thinking and adapting on its own. How could anyone plan a defense against something like that? "Admiral," his science officer reported, "I have been analyzing the human ship movements. I believe I understand what they're doing. Explain. They are not following any predetermined tactics, sir. Instead, they appear to be improvising constantly, trying new approaches as soon as we adapt to their previous ones. It is as if they treat the battle as a creative exercise rather than a military engagement. Creative. That was exactly the word Kethvar had been looking for. The humans were being creative in their violence, finding new ways to kill and destroy that his people had never imagined. Can we adapt our tactics to counter theirs? He asked. Unknown, Admiral. Our training emphasizes coordination and predetermined responses. We are not equipped to improvise the way the humans do. The Independence was close now, close enough that Kethvar could see individual weapon ports along her hull. She was still firing, still maneuvering, still coming directly at his flagship. Her human crew was still alive in there, still fighting despite radiation that should have killed them all. All power to forward shields, he ordered. Prepare for impact. But the Independence didn't ram them. At the last possible moment, the human ship rolled to one side, passing so close to the Void Serpent that Kethvar could have reached out and touched her hull. As she passed, every weapon she had opened fire at point-blank range. Railgun rounds punched through the Void Serpent shields as if they weren't there. Missiles exploded against the hull, tearing holes in the armor. The bridge shook violently, and several control stations exploded in showers of sparks. Damage report. Kethvar shouted over the alarms. Hull breaches on 12 decks, Admiral. Main reactor is showing instability. Forward weapons are offline. The Independence was already gone, moving away to attack another target. But the damage was done. Kethvar's flagship was crippled, and his fleet was in chaos. Admiral, his communications officer said quietly, several of our ships are requesting permission to withdraw. Kethvar looked at his tactical display one more time. Half his fleet was destroyed or damaged. The remaining ships were scattered, unable to coordinate their attacks. And the humans were still coming, still fighting with that terrifying creative fury. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethvar gave an order he had never thought he would give. Signal the fleet, he said. General withdrawal. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. It was surrender in all but name. And somehow, the humans had earned it. Captain Ryan Brooks felt the Independence shudder as another plasma beam grazed her hull. The bridge was filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burned electronics. Half his control stations were dark, and warning lights flashed red across every remaining display. Damage report, he called out, though he could see the answer in the faces of his crew. Chief Engineer Mike Torres' voice came over the intercom, barely audible through the static. Captain, we've lost main power to sections 7 through 12. Hull breaches on 8 decks. The reactor is running at 200% capacity, and radiation levels throughout the ship are approaching lethal limits. Brooks felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. His crew was dying. His ship was falling apart around him. But the alien flagship was still out there, still fighting, still coordinating what remained of the enemy fleet. How long can we maintain current power levels? He asked. 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're lucky. After that, the reactor will either shut down or explode. Either way, we're dead in space. 20 minutes. Brooks looked around his bridge at the people who had followed him into this impossible battle. Communications Officer Kelly Shaw was still at her post despite blood running down her face from a head wound. Navigator Tom Price's left arm hung useless at his side, but his good hand never left the controls. Lieutenant Dan Park's tactical station was half destroyed, but he was still tracking enemy ships on a backup display. These people trusted him. They had followed his orders into hell. And now, they were all going to die unless he could find a way to end this battle in the next 20 minutes. Sir, Kelly Shaw reported, the Constitution is back online. Captain Johnson reports they have partial power and weapons. That was something, at least. The Constitution had been drifting helpless for most of the battle, but human engineering was apparently more resilient than anyone had expected. Captain Johnson and his crew had performed miracles to get their ship fighting again. What about our fighters? Brooks asked. Lieutenant Park checked his displays. 18 left out of 60, sir. Commander Stone is still out there, still leading attacks on the alien ships. 18 fighters, out of the dozens that had launched with such hope and determination. Brooks thought about all the pilots who wouldn't be coming home, all the families who would never see their sons and daughters again. Captain, Amy Ross called from her weapons station. I have an idea. It's crazy, but might work. I'm listening. The alien flagship is trying to restore coordination to their fleet. If we can take it out, the others might retreat. But we don't have enough firepower left to penetrate their shields at long range. What are you suggesting? Amy Ross looked up from her controls, her face grim with determination. We ram them. Sir, full speed. Everything we've got. Use the Independence as a missile. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of damaged systems and the distant sound of explosions. Brooks felt his crew's eyes on him, waiting for his decision. That would kill us all, he said quietly. They were not communications of panic or confusion, as we initially thought. They were tactical coordination of a type we have never encountered before. Every crew member on every ship was contributing to the battle plan in real time. That's impossible. Too many voices would create chaos. Yes, sir. But somehow, the humans made that chaos work for them instead of against them. Admiral Kefvar closed his eyes and tried to process what he was hearing. Everything he had been taught about warfare, everything the Zephyrian Empire had learned through centuries of conquest, was apparently wrong when applied to humans. Sir, his aide said hesitantly, what should we tell the High Command about future operations against humanity? Kefvar was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to dictate his report. To the High Command of the Zephyrian Empire, Admiral Kefvar reporting on the failed subjugation of the human homeworld. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The humans represent a completely new type of military opponent. They do not follow conventional tactical doctrine. They do not fight for territory or strategic advantage. They fight for survival, and that desperation makes them incredibly dangerous. The aide stylus moved quickly across the tablet, recording every word. Their technology is inferior to ours in every measurable way. Their ships are smaller, their weapons less powerful, their defensive systems primitive. However, they use these inferior tools with such creativity and determination that they become effective against our superior equipment. Kefvar thought about the human fighters, swarming around his ships like insects, each one piloted by someone willing to die to protect their homeworld. Most importantly, humans appear to be psychologically incapable of surrender. Even when facing certain death, they continue to fight. Even when their ships are destroyed, they use the wreckage as weapons. Even when they are outnumbered and outgunned, they find ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. His aide looked up from the tablet. Admiral, are you recommending that we avoid future contact with humanity? I am recommending that any future military action against humans be planned with the understanding that we are not fighting a conventional enemy. We are fighting a species that has turned warfare into an art form, where creativity and desperation matter more than superior technology. Kefvar stood up slowly, his injuries protesting the movement. Through the medical bay's viewport, he could see stars, but they looked different now. Somewhere among them was a small blue world where humans lived. Humans who had proven that they could defeat the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. One more thing, he added to his report. The human commander who destroyed my flagship had every opportunity to surrender. His ship was damaged beyond repair. His crew was dying. His weapons were nearly exhausted. But he chose to sacrifice everything for victory. He paused, remembering the moment when the Independence had struck his ship. I have never seen courage like that before. It was not the courage of a soldier following orders, but the courage of a parent protecting their children. Every human fought as if the survival of their entire species depended on their personal actions. The aide finished writing and looked up expectantly. Send that to High Command, Kefvar ordered, and add a personal note from me to the Fleet Admiral. Tell him that humans are not a species to be conquered. They are a species to be respected. Meanwhile, in Earth orbit, the battered Constitution limped toward the repair stations. Captain Johnson stood on his bridge, looking out at the debris field that marked where the Independence had made her final stand. Sir, His communications officer reported, "We're receiving messages from across the system. Ships are turning back. The alien fleet is retreating." Captain Johnson nodded grimly. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. The Independence was gone. The Liberty was gone. Hundreds of fighters and their pilots would never come home. "Send a message to Earth Defense Command," he ordered. "Tell them the invasion has been repelled. The aliens are withdrawing." "What about Captain Brooks and the Independence, sir?" Johnson was quiet for a moment, thinking about his friend Ryan Brooks, who had given everything to protect Earth. "Tell them," he said finally, "that the Independence completed her mission. She showed the galaxy that humanity doesn't surrender. We don't give up. We don't back down. And if anyone wants to threaten our world, they better be prepared for the fight of their lives." Across the galaxy, the word began to spread. The Zephyrian Empire, conquerors of 73 worlds, had been defeated by a primitive species using inferior technology. Other alien civilizations took note. Some began making plans to avoid human space entirely. Others started considering whether humanity might be valuable as an ally rather than an enemy. And in the ruins of the battle, pieces of the USS Independence drifted through space, carrying with them the legacy of a crew that had refused to surrender, even in the face of certain death. The humans had announced themselves to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They were not a species to be ignored or underestimated. They were fighters, survivors, protectors of their own. They were humanity, and they would not go quietly into the night. Admiral Kevvar floated in the medical bay of his surviving ship, the Crimson Dawn. His flagship, the Void Serpent, was gone, destroyed in collision with the human battleship. Half his fleet was destroyed. The other half was limping home with damage that would take months to repair. He had never experienced defeat before. In 30 years of military service, through dozens of campaigns against primitive species, he had never lost a battle. The concept was so foreign to him that he struggled to understand what had happened. "Admiral," his aide said quietly, "the High Command is requesting your preliminary report." Kevvar turned slowly to face him. The aide was young, probably on his first deep space mission. His eyes held the same confusion that Kevvar felt himself. "What do I tell them?" Kevvar asked. "That we were defeated by an inferior species using primitive weapons? That our perfect tactics were useless against an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare?" "Sir, I don't know." Neither did Kevvar. "How do you explain the inexplicable? How do you describe an enemy that treated war not as a science to be mastered, but as an art to be improvised?" His science officer entered the medical bay, carrying a data tablet filled with battle analysis. "Admiral, I have completed my preliminary study of the human tactics." "What did you learn?" Kevvar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "The humans don't fight the way we do, sir. Every decision they make is based on immediate circumstances rather than predetermined plans. Their commanders adapt constantly to changing conditions. Their individual fighters operate with complete independence, while somehow maintaining overall coordination." "That should make them weaker, not stronger," Kevvar protested. "Unity of command is the foundation of military success." "Not for humans, apparently. They seem to thrive on chaos. When we disrupted their formations, they fought better. When we destroyed their command ships, their remaining vessels became more dangerous, not less." Kevvar thought about the human battleship that had destroyed his flagship. Even as it was dying, even as radiation poisoned its crew and its hull broke apart under weapon fire, it continued to fight with desperate creativity. No Zephyrian crew would have made such a sacrifice. "There's something else, Admiral," the science officer continued. "I analyzed the communications we intercepted from the human ships during the battle." "What about them?"